And this week, I've been promising for a couple of weeks now that I will be doing a show on natural treatment of psychological disorders. Specifically, I had promised that I'd be talking about bipolar disorder. So I don't want to break a promise. I'm going to talk about bipolar disorder today and how we can approach it naturally as opposed to with drugs, or in conjunction with drugs possibly, which would be what's considered more integrative medicine. But I don't want to just hold it to bipolar disorder. In fact, I'll go back and review a little bit on natural treatment of depression as well. And if you'd like, you can also take a look at Tampa Bay Wellness Magazine. I have several articles in Tampa Bay Wellness Magazine going back a few months now in various areas. I did an article on weight loss and xenoestrogens and the influence of xenoestrogens in terms of blocking weight loss. I did an article on men's health and some issues there and how to approach some issues that you may be having. I also did the beginning article of my series of articles on natural treatment of psychological disorders. And the first article was kind of an introductory article, and then also talked about depression a little bit. And went over some things that can be done for depression naturally. And then that kind of merges well into natural treatment of bipolar disorder. And then they have some commonality with the next topic, which I've done an article on for Tampa Bay Wellness Magazine that is out in the August issue, August 2015 issue, which is natural treatment of psychological disorders, the third in the series, which is on schizophrenia. So that's an interesting one for us to talk about as well at some point in the future. But for right now, I'm going to focus on depression and mania, or in other terms, bipolar disorder. And one of the common things that I see in many, call it mental disorders or behavioral disorders, is thyroid involvement. Thyroid's involved in a lot in that, and thyroid is involved in a lot of those kinds of things, and also can be influential in learning disabilities, for example. Learning disabilities from, ASD, autism spectrum disorders, but a whole range of things. It's not just autism, but, or variations on autism, but things like ADD, ADHD, even dyslexia. There's an involvement of thyroid. Now, it's not necessarily involvement, although it can be, of the thyroid of the individual who has that disorder. It's more about the thyroid of the mother who gave birth to that individual and where that was on the spectrum. And quite often, insufficient thyroid function can lead to these kinds of disorders because there is a lack of nourishment, call it, to the cerebellum, or the hindbrain, which can be more specifically the Purkinje fibers inside the cerebellum are affected. And what happens there is it affects then the vestibular system, and the vestibular system relates to auditory, optical interconnections, as well as the balancing part of the inner ear activity. And so something that's called proprioception. Boy, I'm really getting technical in this short stuff here. But proprioception is basically, your ability to walk upstairs, for example, knowing where you are physically in space as you go three-dimensionally in the space that we inhabit. So that kind of thing as well is involved. So all of those issues can be involved at the base from thyroid function. And I don't believe that very many endocrinologists understand the well, maybe they understand, but they don't get into the interrelationship of thyroid function and psychological or behavioral or learning disorders. So that's a connection as well, and I don't want to belabor that because I'm focusing on some other things, but there's a lot of involvement with thyroid. And there is a connection to thyroid dysfunction and bipolar disorder as well. And in fact, last week on the show, we mentioned that a lot of women may be perceived as being bipolar at certain times of the month. And I have personally seen individuals in my office that have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder who, through my analysis and treatment of their hormones, it turned out it wasn't really, as far as I can tell, bipolar disorder. It was actually a hormonal disorder that simulated or appeared as bipolar disorder, in the sense that we have the fluctuations in mood that I then attributed to something more hormonal. And one of those connections is thyroid. So, sometimes we don't merge enough. And this is what I love about holistic medicine, is that we have many, many things interrelated. Okay, we are whole beings. We are not the sum of our parts. And this is one of the differences between holistic approaches and conventional medicine. Conventional medicine, everything is broken down into parts, and you have a specialist for this part and a specialist for this other part, and so on. And through a holistic approach, an approach that involves the whole person, you then can take a look at the interrelations between all of the activities going on in a person's life and body, mind, body, spirit, basically, is the way we look at it. And all of those interrelations can be tied together, so they can then be treated, but as a whole. So in other words, we have these interrelations that can affect our bodies physiologically, but also can affect our minds, so such as the situation with women and hormones, right? You get the hormonal fluctuations. If a menstruating woman is coming up near her menstruation, there's a huge problem in the United States and other areas of the world, but largely in the United States, because we don't get into, in conventional medicine, hormonal balancing. There's very little of that done in the US, and it's growing. It is growing. I've been doing it for about a decade myself, and it's been a very good avenue into understanding endocrinology in a way that is very holistic and ties everything together and sees how these things are interrelated, such as, for example, adrenal function and thyroid function. Very, very important connection there. And yet I've had patients come in and tell me that there is no connection, according to an endocrinologist that they had seen, between thyroid and adrenal. And that's just flat out wrong. So understanding these interrelations helps somebody like myself, a clinician involved in helping people balance their hormones or balance their lives, really. It helps me to see those interconnections and help them work on all of those interconnections to then have a better life, but basically to help them more toward whole wellness or holistic wellness, including their physiological aspects, but also including psychological aspects. And the scope of my practice overlaps somewhat into those areas. And this is one of the reasons that I'm currently working on an additional PhD in behavioral medicine, because the roots of those psychological aspects and behavioral aspects of people's situations are physiological. And so as a DOM in Florida, as a practitioner of natural and holistic approaches to whole person medicine, my interest and concern is that individuals are treated using natural approaches that focus on the cause. That is the whole focus of my practice, A Path to Wellness, after which this show is named. And that is the direction I try to help people on, is a path to wellness to improve both their physiological and psychological well-being. So does this mean that I'm trying to take over the role of a psychologist or psychiatrist? Not exactly. However, there is some overlap. And at times I refer to such individuals. Like we have an individual who I've referred a few patients to by the name of Michael Whalen, who has a show on this network. So we have, or on the station. So we have a lot of overlap if we look at things in a holistic way. And Michael is a holistic kind of guy. He's a licensed mental health counselor who has a holistic approach. You know, you can listen back to the podcasts of my show with him on it as well. But these kinds of approaches are very beneficial. And when somebody has a psychological disorder, it is, from my point of view, I'm looking at the physiological underlying factors that can lead to that psychological disorder. So the way I'm approaching it is something we call orthomolecular psychiatry, as opposed to just plain psychology. It's a form of psychiatry. And again, I'm not trying to say I'm a psychiatrist at this moment, although that's a part of my practice I'm developing.
It's a big word.
But orthomolecular psychiatry is basically looking for the root cause, the source, the right molecules to address in treatment of an individual to help balance the way things are working out for them. Okay, so that was a long little dissertation, but basically what I'm trying to give you some background on is where I'm coming from with the treatment of individuals with disorders like depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. Okay, so in my second article, I talk about bipolar disorder, the second article in the series on natural treatment of psychological disorders. I'm going over that. So I'm going to use that article that I wrote as a reference for this show. So we'll talk about that after I take a little bit of a break. So we'll take a short break, and then I'll pick up from that on bipolar disorder, and we'll break it down a little bit in terms of natural approaches to treatment. So you've been listening to A Path to Wellness on rhinoonair.com, WSPF Digital Broadcasting. And, you know, that is, the name is for the practice, A Path to Wellness, and we are located in Northeast St. Petersburg. If you want to get us a call at the practice, it's 727-329-9637, or you can take a look at our reworked website at www.aptw.net, which is short for A Path to Wellness. And when we come back, we'll go right into bipolar disorder without delay. I'll do that.
Perfect. All right, I need to find you. Oh, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Okay. So, of course, was not recording.
Oh, no.
And not the audio. I was recording on the video.
I
So
see.
now I'm going to have to get. So I was so concerned to start the video on time, which we're on video right now.
Okay.
Hello.
Sure.
I forget. I did not turn on the audio. But I'll get it. I still have. And you'll
You
have
have it
it.
recorded, but not.
Absolutely. It's on. It's going to be on your Facebook page. It's already on your Facebook page right now. And as when the show is over, the whole thing will be there as well.
Which Facebook page are we talking
Both. I put it on both because you sent me a new link. So
Yeah,
I
we've
put
got
it
a new
on
link,
your own, and I accepted the friendship there. So
Okay.
I put it on your new one and your old one.
Okay,
Because
great.
you have a doctor's code in that picture on your new one. You may want to change your new Facebook page picture to have you and that doctor. That picture is perfect for your profile. And you're hearing it. This is what happens behind this scene
Right.
during the breaks.
Yeah. I need to take a little break with my voice.
Understood. So give yourself a break there. And
Let's just do. You have a glass, and maybe I'll take a chance on a little bit of tap water and mix a little formula here.
I will bring you some water. You want to do that before you go back on here?
Uh-huh.
Well, because you already been 2 minutes and 23 seconds was this song. That's a long break.
Mhm.
You want me to play another song is what you're saying?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So,
We won't be back.
I'll wait. Basically, a quick email. The building and other things like it's good for your opinions or whatever. Someone obviously. This has herbs in it. There's an Ayurvedic herb called Sheila G, which has the longevity. Which I need to research. All right, welcome back. Thank you for your patience on that little break. And try to get something to help out the throat a little bit. So let's see. Back to, I told you we'd get right into bipolar disorder, so here we are. And there are a lot of misinterpretations in psychology. Sometimes people think that, you know, bipolar disorder is multiple personality disorder. Sometimes people think that schizophrenia is multiple personality disorder, or that bipolar and schizophrenia are the same thing, or these kinds of things. Well, it is a very different diagnosis. But, you know, I personally try not to label people in that way, although it is important to understand the terms and what it means about an individual in terms of their not only behavior, but psychological makeup, you know, this kind of thing. So I was talking about depression. Depression is certainly an aspect of bipolar disorder. And if we talk about depression specifically, that aspect, there's a lot of minerals and vitamins that are very helpful for managing the condition and treatment of depression. And magnesium is a wonderful example of that. And magnesium can help in so many different things. Like, for example, relaxation. It's helpful with. Magnesium is also a precursor to serotonin. It's directly correlated with the level of serotonin generated in your body. And it's very important in terms of the receptivity of your cells and serotonin and GABA. So GABA, noradrenaline, and dopamine production are all involved with magnesium as well. GABA is gamma-aminobutyric acid, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. What that means is that it is giving an individual the reflex to keep from having neurological activity. In other words, it's inhibiting signal transmission. So if somebody's got an overactive mind, GABA is important to help manage that. Okay, so if that overactivity translates into not getting sleep, certainly that can be improved with magnesium. All right, so there are several of these things that are involved. Dopamine is also very important in depression. In fact, a lot of the newer drugs that active protein levels are indicative of the level of inflammation in your body. So as an anti-inflammatory, magnesium helps to reduce the C-reactive protein. Okay. It's also helpful for C-reactive protein directly related to heart function as well, because your heart does rely on magnesium levels to be optimal as well. So then, of course, as I mentioned, the sleep patterns are helped out with magnesium. Also, people with, say, seizures or these kinds of things can be helped with magnesium at times. And things like fibromyalgia, for example, or chronic fatigue syndrome, adrenal insufficiency. Magnesium helps with a lot of different things. So tryptophan is another interesting substance that can be helpful with depression, and specifically 5-HTP I've found is probably working a little better. Tryptophan can help to raise serotonin levels through natural processes that use tryptophan to form serotonin because it's a precursor to serotonin production. Dopamine and norepinephrine are made from phenylalanine or tyrosine. These are other amino acids. So we have tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine all involved in helping depression or reduce depression. All these are amino acids, that is tryptophan, dopamine, and tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine are all amino acids. And there can be also other things involved that can be helpful, like you may have run across SAMe in some of the stores, right? SAMe is S-adenyl methionine, or S-adenosyl methionine, pardon me, which is SAMe, can be supplemented directly for treatment of depression, or can be converted in the body from essential amino acids. See, the body does produce its own SAMe. However, you need to have available the amino acid methionine. It is an essential amino acid, which means that we have to get it from food or nutrient supplementation. It cannot be manufactured by the body itself to, at least at adequate levels, to be useful. So the amino acid methionine is worth supplementing to help this process out. Also, it helps, to have adequate levels of ATP. So ATP is adenosine triphosphate. That is one of the essential molecules in energy production in every cell in your body. Okay, so we have all of these kinds of contributors to improvement in one's mood. And another substance that is becoming far more widely available and well known to have health benefits is fish oil or omega-3. For those who don't want to consume fish or any animal substance, there are other forms of omega-3 as well, some from algae and derivatives from the sea that can be used, and there are extracted omegas from these kinds of substances as well. So you don't necessarily have to be consuming fish oil specifically to get your omega-3s. But fish oil does offer antidepressant effects and anti-inflammatory, similarly to some of the things I mentioned earlier. So we have anti-inflammatory and antidepressant effects and cardiovascular benefit as well. But if somebody is on blood thinners, say, they may not want to be using fish oil because it may affect the blood flow. Now, I should just mention that it's not the fish oil that's causing that issue, it's the blood thinner. Okay, so typically when you use natural substances, they're not the real issue if you're also taking drugs. The real issue comes from the combination and the effect of the drug, and then adding or enhancing that effect can be an issue. So Other substances that may be involved for depression include B vitamins, folate, and B12. They have been showing treatment efficacy. So in other words, to use the B vitamins in treatment of depression can be helpful. And I should say, I'm reading from my article and I'm talking about these issues, these substances that can be helpful for treatment of depression. But of course, we're not trying to, on this show, prevent, cure, or treat disease. You want to work with somebody, in this way, perhaps. Like orthomolecular psychiatry, as I mentioned earlier, is trying to treat the underlying cause of the disorder by looking at nutritional makeup and these kinds of things. Conventional docs, including psychiatrists, don't get nutritional training. They get very, very little, if any. And some are branching out into an area called functional medicine. Very few branch out into an area called orthomolecular medicine. However, this is growing a little bit. And my focus, of course, is on the root cause and treating the disorder by addressing mostly deficiencies that may be involved in the development of disorders, whether they be physiological or psychological. So that's where I'm coming from with this. So we got the FDA disclaimer in there, right? But basically what we're talking about here are lots of different approaches that can be taken to treat depression and bipolar disorder naturally. All right. And lots of herbal medicines can also be used. So it's not just nutritional, and I don't mean to minimize the nutritional, it's certainly extremely important. But herbal medicines also can be helpful, and one of the more commonly known is Hypericum perforatum, which is actually St. John's wort. So a lot of people are familiar with St. John's wort. It has been demonstrated to be as effective as tricyclic antidepressants, which a lot of clinicians don't realize. But St. John's wort can be used directly instead of tricyclic antidepressants and with fewer side effects. That's a wonderful concept, isn't it? So St. John's wort, though, can diminish the effects of pharmaceuticals, including contraceptives. So you don't want that little surprise? Okay, don't take St. John's wort. And has interactions with several anti-cancer drugs. So there's an issue as well. There are other herbs that are helpful with depression, like rhizome schwa. This one's Chinese. Rhizome xuancheng is one. Radix scutellaria, also known as skullcap, can be helpful. Partly because it's a nerve vine, it helps to relax the nerves. And Radix philodendron, or philodendron, in other words, the plant philodendron, is helpful. And these are in some Chinese herbal formulas that have demonstrated antidepressant effects. And philodendron also has the benefit of helping to reduce cortisol levels. So in other words, it can help with adrenal function issues and help calm an individual as well as help with depression. So these are wonderful substances that can be used in the treatment of the depression aspect of bipolar disorder. All right, so that was a lot. You may have to play it back later on or something, but or listen to the podcast. But as you can see, there's a plethora of approaches that can be taken to treat depression. The fallback in conventional approaches is the SSRI. That's the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And what that means is that these drugs keep serotonin levels elevated artificially. Okay, they keep the serotonin that you use, and then what's left over actually is what they're keeping from being reabsorbed. Okay, by inhibiting the uptake of the serotonin that's in excess. And there are other similar approaches like acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, which are used in the treatment of Alzheimer's and these kinds of disorders, or memory cognitive disorders, which inhibit the uptake essentially of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that's important to cognitive and memory function, and acetylcholinesterase inhibitors are used to block the eating up of the acetylcholine, in this case, by enzymes specifically targeting acetylcholine. It's a similar approach to SSRIs. So there are a lot of these similar kind of philosophies that are being used to address such disorders. But as you can see from, or as you have just heard, there are many approaches to treating depression and bipolar disorder by extension. But vitamin C, magnesium, tryptophan, acetinosyl methionine, or SAMe, and so on. That I've been talking about here. B12, folate, even some precursors to ATP like DMG and TMG, which I haven't talked about yet, but DMG is dimethylglycine and there's trimethylglycine. So TMG and DMG help to energize cells and bring somebody, or help to bring somebody out of a low mood, along with things like omegas, such as omega-3s and 9s, but especially omega-3s from fish oil and other sources. And then we have all the herbal approaches that I've been mentioning. All right, so let's take another break, and then we'll go back into it some more and talk some more about bipolar disorder and approaches to treating these issues. You're listening to A Path to Wellness on rhinoonair.com, WSPF Digital Broadcasting. And again, if you'd like to reach us at the office, you can call 727-329-9637, or you can take a look at our newly revamped website at aptw.net. And we'll talk to you after the break more about bipolar disorder.
Camera's turned off right now. I figured it out.
You should take a look at my new website.
I will.
My webmaster is Patricia.
Good.
She did it. She did it with a tool set.
Good.
So it's still not 100% functional, but she got a good job done.
And it's apathTowellness.com.
No, aptw.net is the short form, or it can be apathToWellnessLLC.com. Yeah, my throat's getting worn out easily today, so. I haven't checked it out with that version, so I'll do that. Path to Wellness. Wellness LLC.
I just don't want to do it now because I'm afraid to overload this one because
Right.
it shuts down on me. So I'm learning with
Cooperate.
I'm working with. Hopefully soon I'll have new equipment, the latest and the greatest. Well, I put it out there because that's how I work and manifest things. And in the short term, I will work with what I have. Understanding it to That's.
I didn't get a call from Michael.
Hmm?
Remember we were talking about his show?
Yeah, I haven't talked to him
And
since. I was at Madeira Beach until Tuesday, until Tierra Verde.
That's right, you've been
House, sitting there, and oh my gosh, every time I tried to do some work, I brought my laptop. I'll give a prime example.
Mm-hmm.
And I had everything. I go out and I had half of my power cord, the other half is missing. Oh, yeah. So I come home the next day, I go back, I grab a power cord, but I grab the traditional one with the 3 prongs. Well, this one, no, is little round holes. Another day without the computer. Come back the next day, look for a cable, but it had the little holes. So I grabbed that one, get back there, go to use it. Turns out I only had 2 prongs and not 3. That's 3 days without using my laptop. I mean, it went on, and you would think, you know, somebody would not understand, well, you have a laptop, why can't you work from there? Not to mention that their signal was very weak, and even on my phone, so I had very limited. So by day 6, going back and forth, the weekend I just did nothing. And then during the week I did very little, but trying to upload a video that I couldn't convert up to the YouTube, it took 34-minute video, just a portion of it, took 4 hours to upload. So it just went on. So the last 12 days I've been out of commission, and today is my first day back actually, like really working it. We have 1 minute and 13 seconds.
Yeah, that's something we added to the website, was my videos.
Good.
Yeah.
And now all you have to do, you can even go on Facebook and get the link and share it.
Oh, it's on our Facebook page too.
Okay, good. So that's your new official Facebook.
The new Facebook page, yeah.
Okay.
That's the official. So we're getting there.
Just change the picture and put it in.
Let me show you this stuff. See on the website, see, Walk With Us on a Path to Wellness. Right? I have RX Nutrition here. See, I have a drop down here. So people can go into Nutrimetrics, Metagenics, or PM International. And, you know, I'm getting them to create accounts on Metagenics to reorder things that
I have I bought the name RX Reboot.
Oh, you did?
I own that name, yeah. So I need to create a link there.
Oh, okay. Well, talk about that. PM International is on here, and then go in and join and all that stuff. But, and we need to talk about that situation a little bit too. But let's see. If we go to the home page, see this is this month's article.
Cool.
Yeah, I forgot that was there. So that should be this one on bipolar or schizophrenia. Oh, it's on bipolar, yeah.
Good.
So actually, that's last month's article.
Your WeFit is getting proactively involved. Proud of her.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, she's motivated by that stuff, you know.
Good.
Yeah. And anyway, from
It's good.
somewhere.
That's a mobile site. I will check out the other one. Okay, need to bring you back in.
Mm-hmm.
We already went into another song.
I have a listing of all my videos on.
And can we come back?
Naturalmente. Hola. Welcome back to A Path to Wellness. You're listening to WSPF Digital Broadcasting, WSPF-DB.com, RhinoOnAir.com, and wherever you're listening to us, because this is web radio, I hope you're having a good day. So, in bipolar disorder, people kind of have it a little rough because they go through mood changes, sometimes pretty dramatic mood changes. Depression can be fairly severe. We've gone over a range of things that can be helpful with treating depression. Of course, we're not talking about dosages because dosing needs to be individualized. And that's why you need to come see somebody like myself to adjust dosages and get things working correctly. to make things happen for you in a good way. And this is one of the issues that I find with people who have tried these kinds of things on their own. You know, going out and saying, well, okay, you know, Mary said that this is good for depression, so somebody goes and gets St. John's wort, say. And they try it out and they take their capsule or 2 a day or whatever. And first of all, the form may not be the most effective, encapsulated as opposed to liquid, that kind of thing. So bioavailability could be an issue, but also the dosing of the substance to be helpful for somebody, both physiologically and psychologically, perhaps, in this case with the St. John's wort. So, you know, working with somebody who understands the dosages that are needed and can do the right kinds of testing to assert that, yes, this is what you need, and show it black and white, can be very helpful. You know, and I didn't really get into another possibility here, so I'll go ahead and bring this one up. Vitamin D is a big one because a lot of people may suffer from something called seasonal affective disorder. Well, depression is often a result of that, and specifically vitamin D can be helpful with that. Quite often insufficient vitamin D is at the root of depression, okay? But insufficient vitamin D can be at the root of other things that lead to depression. Like, for example, a woman who's not producing enough estrogen, vitamin D helps you produce that, or a man who, or a woman who's not producing enough testosterone. Vitamin D is involved in the production of those